Hey, welcome to Creative Space, part photography. Today we are discussing portraiture with LED lights. My name is Tjalling Halbertsma and we dive right into here. So we have here some slides and we have some examples of actual portrait shoot I did for this education. Here we go. So the main thing is where we talk about is, in previous lessons I talked about different kind of lights, outdoor lights, etc. So here we go with indoor lights with LED. So portraiture can be done with outdoor light, as covered in previous session. You still can find these on Creative Space website. You also have indoor light or ambient light. That means that whatever is available, you work with that. So that can be halogen lights or fluorescent lights or even window light, what's coming in. That's what we call ambient light. And you can be really creative with it. Sometimes it's difficult because you have different kinds of light. They have different color tones. Then we have another one that is flash. That can be either from your camera with a small flash on it or more expensive flash units for studio. And then the LED. LED is reasonably new in the film and photo world, but it has a ton of possibilities and it's cheaper. All right, so here we explain indoor portraiture with LED light. I'm going to show you the general setup of my portrait shoot, and step by step I'm going to show you which light gives what kind of effect on the person who sits in front of you. In the end I will also show the final image after post-processing, so that means that first I'm going to show the image I took from the camera, which is not post-processed, not so, it's not a final result, and then the final result on the end. So how can you as a beginner or an intermediate learn to get confident? Because portrait shooting is an interesting job. It can be intimidating, it has its difficulties. I'm going to try to tell you as simple as possible how to work with it. So, some guidance from me. And we do some question and answers in the end. So here's an example of a final shot that I did. All right, good. Portraiture. It's important to know that it's been around for a long, long time. I think you will know it, but it's good to remember that you're not the first one who is doing this. You can get a lot of inspiration from previous portraits made by painters, sculpturists, or people who made drawing. So these images were from the Rijksmuseum in Holland. If you go to Rijksmuseum website on internet, they have a whole section and they can show a lot of images of portraits done in the past. Very inspiring, very interesting to see what you like and what works and what doesn't work. Photos from the 1800s, that was the new medium. More factual, more as is, as the reality is, less romanticized. So, a portrayal, I call it a representation or a depiction or a definition of a person. I think it's important when you start doing a portrait session that you know what you're doing and why you're doing. But basically you are going to depict or make a representation of that person. Portraying a person is to remember, is to honor, to share, to love or to reflect. you can choose. You can also put them all together and then make the best portraits you ever did. So it's very important to keep that basics into your mind when you do a portrait. So here are some more images. You see even somebody with a pencil or sketching, or the photo in the middle. You see more contemporary. Top right is the real classical 50s lighting. Even you see a dog. That's also a portrait. It's not about only the humans. It's also about the animals. Beautiful animal portraits. If you can find books from that. You can also do a portrait from somebody at work in a certain environment. That's called an environmental portrait. Like when somebody is is a blacksmith, for example, you want to see the environment of how somebody works normally and make a good representation. So probably somebody poses in front of his equipment, you have some lights, and then you see some material, so you have a real ambience photo of the person. Portraits are being used for all and everything, and probably you know that because you look at the internet, you don't look at Instagram or Facebook, and everybody makes portraits now. But to do a quality portrait, you need to have a little bit of a focus and take some time for it. So here are 3 examples I did for a project. The intention is important. What do you want to show? So the gentleman with the watch and the suitcase, it's a depiction of somebody who is living in, let's say, the time trap. Always try to be on time, in a hurry, and what is important? My clock is important because the next appointment I've got to be there. And that it's how you approach your portrait determines how you're gonna make the final image. Top right, I asked a couple of people if they wanted to portray somebody who is a bit of a greedy person, and he can step into his role, and then with the addition of some money and a look and an expensive watch, that's going to work out. And then I adjust my lighting to it. As you see, the gentleman with the watch and the suitcase, the light is flat. There's kind of boring tone and color to it. The one with the greedy look, he's like sharper, he's like hunting down the money. And that's exactly what we wanted to reach. And then there's the lady in the bottom right, and she's on travel. So she has a camera strap around her neck, and she travels and she looks at life or a new country with open eyes and curiosity. So these are just a few examples from an older project, but I thought it was important to show you how your goal determines how the image is going to be. I'm going to talk about it more now. So what are your intentions? You will hear me say that a couple of times. You can have an artistic intention. The photos you saw before were artistic. They had a bit of a free interpretation. Then you have documenting. That is, say, you want to have like an environmental portrait of a blacksmith or somebody who works as a director in an office. You make it more factual. Hey, this is the person at that moment. If you look at it from 20 years from now, it's like, oh yeah, that right? That was the typical moment that was in my highlight career or whatever. And then you have commercial, which is way more purpose-driven. Commercial is, it's got to have a quality to it that might persuade other people to buy things or to believe somebody. So if you have like a somebody that makes clothes, fashion, and he wants to be depicted into his own fashion, you gotta make it, you know, really nice that both the fabric and both the skin tones are looking beautiful. So these are only 3, but I try to keep it simple. Only 3 sections: artistic, documenting, or commercial. Right, so here comes the important part. Before the shoot, ask yourself a few practical questions. Where do you want to photograph? Is it in a certain room, in a certain space, outside, inside? Where do you want to position your sitter or your person? What kind of background? A lot of people forget that the background plays a huge role into your photo. Why is that? Is because from the image that you have like 30–40% you have the person, the other 60% you see the background. So if it's a neutral background, the person comes more forward. If it's a background with a lot of clutter, it can either help the photo, you know, or it can distract a lot from the person. The clutter has got to have a function in the photo. So try to look for neutral walls with a certain color, or a gray wall, or if we take this black background away, we have a white wall. Probably we're going to do that the next time. It's just make sure that you look behind the person and say, okay, I don't want to have that electric socket right above here. Just turn the camera and then you have the person from this side and the electric socket is out of sight. You will be happy to see it. Don't think that you do that later in Photoshop and everything. Try to do as much as you can in the camera. What kind of background, what light, natural flash or LED? That's something you have to consider. We will focusing on the LED light today, so that will be your main input. Position of the person to be photographed. If somebody sits like this and the camera is right over there, you got to have a reason for that. Otherwise, you make sure that the people are changing position, right? Changing position. Sitting, standing, whatever. Don't get static, because normally you think like camera like this, person stands like straight in front of the camera. It's not really fun. It's better to turn a little bit so you have a bit of a flow in the person's body. You know, a dead-on shot like this doesn't have a good dynamic. So play with that. Angle of your camera. You can have straightforward, but you can also go a bit under. Maybe that gives the person a little bit of a more higher position, you know. You can have the camera higher and the person lower. You can find all kind of angles. Walk around. Don't stay in the same position all the time. Walk around and keep track of the background. All right. Then we have a bit of a technical thing. You gotta be focused on your settings. And best is if you put the settings right at the beginning of the shoot, so you don't have to reset your settings all the time. Try if you can do that, because that will save you time, and that's also better for the communication with the person who's sitting in front of you. So I covered in an earlier lessons about f-stops in the technical video. So f2.8 means that my eyes could be sharp, but maybe the back of my head here is already unsharp. It's a shallow depth of field. f11 has more depth of field. The sharpness starts here and ends here, here, or here, depending a little bit. So you have to decide in advance, do I want to have a shallow depth of field, or there is no right or wrong. Photos with f11 or f16 can be as beautiful as the ones with the shallow depth of field. It's more what you like, what you feel. If you use LED, 125 shutter speed is a good start. Most of the LEDs, they have like adjustments, so you can, if it's too bright, you can adjust the LEDs, but you can also go to maybe a 250 shutter speed. The ISO, that depends on your location and how strong the lights are. ISO 200 to 1000, if you go above 1000 you might get a little bit more grain in your photos. So you gotta check that out. Some people find the grain really beautiful, and I can see that. But you gotta know that if you don't like the grain, how to get rid of it. So keep your ISO between 200 and 1000. It's better to push up your ISO a little bit more, like to 1000, and keep your shutter on 125, 200, 250. If you make the shutter speed like 60s of a second, you might get movement in the image. White balance. I would say put it on auto. That saves you a bit of dialing and stuff. Alright, so for the intensity or intimacy of your portraits, focus on, okay, your intention. You got the same word again. Your specific feeling or goal. Even if that is playing, that can be your goal. But don't go to a photo shoot like, I hope it will be right. It's better to feel into the photo shoot. Check out what you need. Is it for a magazine? Is it for you? Is it for the person self? And work towards that execution of the shoot. Because your intention is actually what you infuse in the image. Now, if you're a total beginner, that's still a little bit premature. But the more you get advanced in portraiture, the more your heart is in there, the better your images will be in sense of how you communicate with the person in front of you. So basically, your intention is a part of how you fabricate the photo. It's not only the dials of the camera, it's not only if a person is shy or very confident in your photo. It's a combination of a couple of things. If you understand and you accept that, then your attitude towards portraiture will also change in the meanwhile. Okay, so another thing is very important is your connection. So you gotta also understand that somebody who is in front of you, you say, hey, would you mind sitting for me? I would like to make some photos of you. The moment you sit there and you get like 1, 2, 3 or 4 lights in front of you, you're like, oh, now I gotta be something. It's almost natural that you get that feeling like, oh, now I should be something. Now I have to behave like this. Now I have to look like this. I personally really like it when people get natural. I'm personally not a big fan, but that's just me, of really artificial poses, and because we've seen them all over the time. Your uniqueness is what's unique. And the poses we've seen in magazines, we've seen it 1,000 times already. So if you make your person comfortable and you connect with the person and break the tension to say, oh, we're just gonna play around a little bit, and the first 10 shots are just for try out, and have a look at, you know, how it looks so far. You can even talk a little bit about what you're doing or how's your week been. Make the sitter, the person in front of you, comfortable. And then give it time, because the photo number 10 or photo number 30, you have time to become more and more relaxed. You don't have to do that in a short window, unless you're in a incredible hurry. So Sitting there with all these lights can be intimidating, so maintain a comfortable, encouraging communication if needed. All right, guess who is that? I did some exercise shots before I did this, and I really, if you have nobody that works with you, you have to do the camera, so you have to have a little clicker, and you got to make sure that your eyes are exactly in focus. Well, that's indeed the point. The eyes are the gateway to connection. So even if you have a portrait of somebody that is a little in him or herself, most images will work if you get the eyes connected to the eyes to the camera, or even look further away, it doesn't matter, but if you can see the eyes, there's a huge expression in the eyes. I recommend them to keep them sharp, like 95% of the time. Sometimes it's also okay if it's not, but most of them, all right. So this is a photo of the light setup. I will show kind of, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 photos of different light setups and what the effect is on somebody that's in front of you. This is actually done right here. This is the same paper as what you see on the screen, the same white wall and the lights that Tom brought in. Different lights, different positions make different results. You gotta imagine that if you have the camera positioned on one person, like on its face, and you move the light from here to here, it's a huge difference. Maybe in everything what you see around you, in 180, 360 around you, it's not a big deal. But the light going from here to here is already a big difference. If there's a light coming from there, which it does, and I block it with something, it's going to make a difference. So you got to learn to watch for the micro changes. They will come out as macro changes in your photo. So be aware of that. So the lights I used in the session, look back here. The one that has the full light on, the small one, is about $100 with a stand. Well, that's actually not much at all. Then we have another one in the left corner above my head. That's about $300, including a stand. It's LED. And the one that is in the right side, close to the green light, it's about $400 in a stand. Now, I must say, these are three different lights. They are very good for video. I happen to find that the skin tones of different lights were a little off. So you will see images that I make that the skin tone is a bit different, so I had to really work on them to make them better. So yeah, for photography, my set of lights that I'm using, and that's the True Studio flashlight, is about $2,500, $3,000, something like that. A couple of lights with batteries and the whole thing, very sturdy. These are really, really cheap, so that's for really good for beginners. So don't be shy. Ask something for Christmas, and so here we go. Tom, what time is it?
11:25.
Okay. So again, these are the prices. These you can find in different stores here in Canada. So it's not inexpensive. So on the left side, you see the setup. I got 3 lights, and one of them is on. And on the right side, you will see the image of Jordan. Jordan, thank you very much for being our beautiful model. So you see, she has only the light coming from kind of from the side and a little bit back. That gives an interesting light concept. there's not much you see from the eyes, not much see from the other side of the thing. It gives a certain effect. Just so you know that if you have a black background, she kind of disappears with her left side. And if you have a white background, you will see more contour. So if I add one more light, the one you will see the difference now, you'll have light from both sides. So especially when you do people with focus, sports people, athletes, it's very, very intriguing to have the light coming from the sides. It makes it more a sharp profile. You have a bit of a shadow in the middle, and I want to give you a little warning. If the lights are too much back, then you will get this little shadow right here. If the lights move a little forward, then you have the light coming really together in the middle here. But watch out for the middle strip. It can be great on athletes that are really on the position of, as if they're doing their sport. But if you want to make a quiet, good portrait, I would not recommend it in this way. Good. Then we have the big light right in front. So I switched off the two other lights in the back, and I only do this one kind of on a 45 angle. So what happens is that there's enough light to have two eyes. You have a bit of a shadow from the nose going into the cheek here, and that's close to what you call a Rembrandt lighting. That's an official term. So if somebody sits like that, you move the light a little bit, or you ask the person, can you move your face a little bit to the left or to the right? Again, this is just one light, so she almost disappears in the background. So if you want to avoid that, then you would put another light on her hair, which is normally called a hair light. So now we have three lights, which gives a lot of more light. The background has now more, because you can see on the black paper that there's a light bleed coming from the LEDs, and then you have a very strong one from the front. So now there's a lot of contour. Imagine if she was sitting in front of a white wall, then with her darker hair she would come really, really forward. So this kind of light is kind of on the bright side. Personally, I would try to avoid to have like a reflection in the forehead of your light. If your front light, the big light, is too strong, you can never get it away in post-production. So you gotta stay focused on that in your photo shoot. The light on the hair is all very, very, very clear. So you have a more dimension. If you use more lights, you see the more dimensions in the person. Now I positioned the big light from one side to the other side. And I also changed her face a little bit, and so the light came like this. If you remember, in the beginning I showed you a portrait that this was almost the same position. So you can use that. Black on black is challenging because you don't want your model to disappear 100%. On the other hand, it also gives a very beautiful, she comes out as light with the darker background. So I kind of love darker backgrounds. The big light that I have turned on in this left photo, it has barn doors. So barn doors are, well, doors. You can either close the light, dim the light like this, but also like this. Very handy. If you can look in the right photo, look on the paper, the background paper, you see there are some stripes. It's because I played with the barn doors and I put her a little bit in the shade and gives more light to the background. So you can do all kind of things. If you have these barn doors on, you can move the light if you want, and see how a part shade and a part light stripe is just affecting your model. So you can even have like a bit of a sliver of light here, or a larger sliver of light. You can do tons of things with that, for sure. Now I have 3 lights on again. So this is kind of the raw photo. So I still have to attune the photo in a post-processing. What you see is light on her hair on the other side, so you can see her profile. It gives a bit of a depth and a strong frontal light. The good thing is that we can see her eyes. So if you want to have a bit more of an intimate portrait or a strong portrait, you got to make sure that you get contact with these eyes, with the person and with the eyes. Also, I went down kind of on my knees here, camera lower, because she was sitting in the chair, and you change your position. All right. Okay, so another thing I did, for example, I just put one light in the back on, the big light in the front is off, and I put the LED on the ground. Kind of like here, it's on the ground. Now we have a lot of light, so you don't see it so much. But you see what a kind of effect it gives. So if you walk around with that light, it has an incredible amount of expressions. Even if the person stays the same, you walk with the light and it changes the facial expression. It can become very moody, it can become intriguing, whatever you want it to. Now, in the final photo, I would not allow the white and blue sticker on the back of the chair, of course, but hey, just gotta play around a little bit. So, the light on the ground, make sure that you still see her eyes, and then the light in the back, it still makes a profile of her hair. So here are 2 different pictures. You see in the left picture there are 2 lights on. That's from the first one of the color version of Jordan. I also have a little bit of stripes on the background, so you can use light also as a background performer. Make stripes, you can even put something in front of that light that gives a bit of a shadow. It creates depth. And the other light, the big one, covers her whole face. So she has like a very clear, open expression there. The second one, the photo on most right, was done only with the light in the back. So the one that is on the paper. So most of her face, you cannot see it. But you see a little bit of light on her hair. So you can see the position of the lights, it makes a lot of changes. Okay, so I'm going to show a few images. I did kind of what you saw already, but then I played with it in post-processing. I did that because when you're photographing and you're busy with your model and you look at your little screen, sometimes you might get don't have a confident feeling. Is it right? Is it sharp? Is it good? That's why you need to make a lot of shots. These days with digital, you can go ahead. It's no problem. If your SD card in your camera has space, you clean it up before your photo shoot, you can do a lot of things. And with the LED, there's no battery issue. We go back here, yeah. So I want to show you images like this was from the camera, and then what you can do with it later on. So that's a choice. You can have the same session, but images ask for a certain post-processing. If you do them all the same, you kind of might miss the chance. Some positions of the person, the light and everything, they are better for black and white. Some are better for color. So you gotta basically play with the whole thing and see how the image comes out best. I thought the LED was really good for black and white, excuse me, because you have enough light to get it sharp. You can easily do the positions. The cheaper LED lights are not 100% skin tone precise. At least I'm kind of spoiled because I have these expensive flash units, and their quality is just unbelievable. But if you start with portrait, that's a later concern. You can work with it in the white balance in your software after the photo shoot. Here's a bit of color. It's more a kind of gentle portrait with some accentuation on colors, a bit more introspection. All these kind of things can happen during a photo shoot. It doesn't have to be straight in front, especially if you have like if you're a person that comes in front of you is a bit insecure. It always starts like, you know, and then later on you just started to relax and see how people come to relaxation. This one I made it a little bit lighter, so you get a real black and white effect, also with the flowers on her dress. The eyes come out well. There's still a differentiation from the background, so it's not black in black. And you see the chair, I removed the black and blue sticker, white and blue sticker. So, and then when you do these things, you photograph in this size, and then later on you can crop it a little bit, whatever is best for the position. So this is the same image that I did. And I'm just going to be back to that one image that I had here. Excuse me, huh? So this one is the same. So I want you to understand that however you make that shot, there's room for refinement when you do the post-processing. So this is the actual image. There's no particular changes done. This is kind of from the camera. And this is how I interpreted it. Maybe you don't like it, maybe you like it, but you try to find how you like it. That's where it's all about. It's how you define it, what can you do with that person, and how do you find the right expression in there. Okay, so short recap. Here we go. Recap. A portrayal is a representation, a depiction or a definition of a person. So don't get caught up in all the technical stuff from your side. It's better to come prepared so you can give attention to the one who sits in front of you. That makes the person more comfortable. You can get better results than when you are kind of nervous or maybe even irritated because you forgot something. All those restlessness from an unpreparedness, even if it's a simple thing in your living room or one of your brothers and sisters, your family members, it doesn't matter. If you're prepared, that is what a professional does, you can get better results. What are your intentions? If you think, I'm going to make a portrait, try to go a little step further. What do you want to do with it? Do you go for the beauty? Do you go for like a business portrait? Got to be sharp, strong? Is it for a real estate person? It's got to have a gentle, very approachable image. So your intention is very, very important, and often people forget that. But it's kind of your red wire through everything. Make a plan so you are prepared. So also technical, have your stuff set up, check it if the batteries are good, light, camera. It's equipment, it's technical equipment, so you have to have a certain standard for it to have it ready. Change the light or change positions. Again, it makes a huge difference if somebody sits like this or stands up or it goes lower or, you know, everything. All the movements in this little rectangle of your camera are huge differences. When you look it through the eyes and you're in a big space, the difference between this and this might not seem much. But within your small rectangle, it's a big change. So you got to see it from that perspective. And the last one, always connect with the person. Make him, her, or whatever the person in front of you, make it comfortable, because that's going to be your end result. You will see the more you do portraiture, the better you become, and the better you see what happens in the result. Especially when you did the shoot and you look back, you think like, oh yeah, I can see the beginning was a little tense, and then hey, the last few pictures were really, really relaxed, really good. All right. No big deal, right? So if you have questions or answers, you can do that right now. Tom, is the channel open? So because you might have questions concerning a couple of things. Let me check out. Yeah, I can go ahead. So, and if you think about what camera should I take, that's really with whatever fits in your budget. All cameras can take portrait. Don't spend too much money if you're not ready for it. All cameras can make portraits, and with all shots, it's more what you do with it, with the person, and playing with the LED light, than if it's a massive camera or expensive camera or not. Try to just be comfortable with what you have, and if you become comfortable in an upgrade, then you go for that. And there are tons of new cameras coming out every year, and they keep getting better and better, and their ISO level, you know, first it was 1600, was kind of the edge where the grain started to come in. Now then it became 3200, and then 6400, and it gets better and better. The cameras are unbelievable. What is possible now with the cameras, especially also with the mirrorless, who can be silent, completely silent, so you can do your shoot without hearing anything. It's incredible what you can do with it. So I would recommend, don't get too feisty about, yeah, but this camera is not good. If you were back in time, 5 years, even 10 years, the cameras for now are just incredible. So, and they are full of functions and possibilities and low light capabilities. This camera, for example, has in-body stabilization. More and more cameras are going to have that, even in their lens, which means that if you have a bit of a shake, the camera or the software balances that out. So that means that normally on a 60th of a second you could shoot somebody okay, just okay, borderline. Now I can shoot on a 15th of a second. That's unbelievable. So there's a lot of amazing technique. Yeah, you have a question.
Yeah, there's a question. What are the Kelvin numbers for dark background versus a white background?
The Kelvin numbers. Okay, so the question is, what are the Kelvin numbers for a black background? It's not particularly a black background. It's more like the light you are using. Do you use daylight or do you use a warmer tone light? So I'm going to show you something here. So I won't shine it directly in the camera, but this is like an LED that has like a, you can change the warmer tone or the Kelvin. This is cold light, almost cold light, right? So can you see it, Tom? Yeah. So now I'm turning more white, warm light in there. So it gives more, you can adjust it to the fluorescent light or spots, whatever. Now it's completely warm, you see? There's a warmer tone. Well, on that light, it's almost daylight because we have a window over there, so we use the kind of same light. So you don't get like a strange mix-up. So I'm going to put it back to colder light. So this is what you call daylight. More and more LEDs will have this stuff. So you can adjust your ambient light, which means the light you have somewhere, and you want to add some additional light to it. You do a little photo shoot in a gallery or in an office and say, okay, I get a lot of fluorescent light. I'm going to adjust the tone a little bit. Very, very handy. In the old days, like only 10 years ago, lol, you had filters in front of it to compensate it, and now you have it all in your light. And this has batteries, so you can work with it also outdoors. Again. So for the background, to come back on your question with the black background, a white or a black background is not where the Kelvin gets determined. It's the light you are using in the room, the ambient light, or if you have a darker studio, do you choose a colder light or a warmer light? That's kind of, it's a personal choice. Great. Good question.
Do you ever use music or other sounds to enhance the portrait shoot mood?
Good question, really good. Yes, I do. In the portrait shoot that I did with Jordan, I had like a very relaxing, the piano music. And she said, I think I fall asleep with this music. So we changed it to her favorite rock band or whatever it was. And that was the good mood. That was really good. So I would not underestimate music as a background, especially not like loud, but as a background. But maybe you do a shoot of a band and you just put music on and it gives a thrill. And that kind of thrill is kind of tangible in the photo shoot. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very good. Yeah, so basically the music is the same part as getting somebody comfortable. You create your atmosphere, you create your ambience that suits your need for your photo shoot. We did photo shoots in the studio with bodybuilders, and we cranked up the music with a very pumpy house disco music, and it was really energizing. But that was a part of the ambience, so they would feel energized and would show off their muscles. Talking about bodybuilders, if you want to do a photo shoot, a portrait session, and you want to incorporate the upper body, for example, and somebody with a tank top or maybe even without any shirt, don't forget that if you put a light from the top, it accentuates the abs and the muscles and all that kind of stuff. So you can, not only from the side you can have light, but also from the top. The only thing is that you don't want to have like big dark spots here, because the light comes here and you have no light in the eye. So you need maybe a little bit, and then you can use the barn dorans to make like a sliver of light right through the eyes, just like they do in the movies. And then you can play with it. So if you have people with the bodybuilding or show the body, yoga, whatever, just make sure that you play with the light, that it comes out well. One more question. Yeah, good question.
What glass or lens do you prefer?
Right. That's a good question. That is. If you're a beginner, I would say use zoom lens. from, let's say, 30, 40 millimeter to 80, maybe 100. Because then you have the possibility to have a bit of a wider focal length, or you can zoom in at a straight point without moving yourself. Personally, I like at least 2.8, that it has the capability of 2.8 when you do a portrait, because then you can use a shallow depth of field. But yeah, on the other hand, start with the, if you're a beginner, start with the lens that is has this wide range, 40 to 80, 100, 50 to 120, something like that. When you are becoming more experienced, you have a certain camera that you really like for portraiture. I have a fixed lens, like an 80 or 75 millimeter lens. Sometimes I use a 35 millimeter to get more of the person, a certain angle. But these kind of things you have to play with to see if you like it and if you find it helpful. So if I come back, if you're a beginner, try to have a zoom lens. This is, for example, a zoom. So you can see it moves in and out, in and out. So I have a reach from 40 to, what is it, 80. Yeah, something like that, yeah. That I would recommend, yeah. Yeah. We're good? What time is it?
11:52.
11:52. Yeah, if you have any more questions, this session will stay online, so you can go back to it. You can look at the photos like we did before. Whoop. You know the settings on the left side and kind of the result. Again, it's a huge difference where you put the light, how you put it, and if you have barn doors in your light, you can make areas lighter here, and you can give it a bit of shadow in the bottom side. So much possibilities. Do some research on what kind of LED you like to use. You used to have, don't buy these lights with a, what do you call that? The bulb that you have to screw in. It's way better to have an LED because you can play with the strength, and you have then the color difference too. I think LED is a really good starter for beginners. And as you see, you don't need much. This was a setup from, I think, $700, with including stands. Somewhere had batteries. You can have also 3 small ones. Then you are like $300, and you still have enough light. It's a good way to start. You can spend some more on a camera. If you really would like to go in portraiture, I would invest in a good lens, because that determines how sharp the eyes can be. And if you have like a 500-600 package camera including lens, of course it's a different quality glass than, let's say, when you go to like $1,500 or maybe $900 camera and then you buy a good lens. But again, there are incredible amount of websites that with passionate ambassadors about which brand, which camera, which lens. So if you do a little bit of research, which I highly recommend, you will find something that in the end you will choose with your emotion. You look at the technical things, but basically camera, it's all a bit the same. This brand, this brand, this brand. Choose what you what feels comfortable. If you like the interface in the back of the camera on the screen, if you like that all. So it's in the end it's a personal choice. The technique is way up there already. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna close this off. Portraits. One more sessions. You see here. So you understand that this would be been way different if there's a white background. Okay. So if you're interested and you live in the area of Collingwood, that's where we are broadcasting live. I have a photo show in the gallery at 65 Simcoe Street. There are about 20 or more works, very different types of work. There are big projects, there are more like painterly portraits. There are classical portraits done in platinum palladium, which is the antique way of printing. If you want to get to know what you can do with photography, you're most welcome to see my show. It's up till 29 December. And you can come into the hallway and then step into the gallery Tuesday to Saturday. There are not many people, so it's don't worry about the COVID and that. There's the alcohol spray and everything, so don't worry about it. So anyway, I hope you've learned something. Go back to this video and just look at the photos if you have LED equipment or you want to buy it, and see what you need to see how it works with the setup of the light. And if you have any other question, I think you can just put an email to Tom and he will send it to me. I will answer them. Come back to this video so you can understand how simple it actually is, and by doing it you're building up experience, and then you go further and see more details and you develop your skills. It's really, really satisfying to do good portraits, not only for you but also for the ones who you're doing it for. Beautiful photo hanging on the wall, or put it on social media, whatever. It's way better than just a selfie in the bathroom and you're looking at the camera, right? So have fun enjoying making portraits with the LED lights. I hope to see you next time. Thank you very much for your attention. Bye-bye.